She was just the clumsy intern who spilled coffee on the CEO. Now, she's wearing his ring and holding a pregnancy test that will change everything. But it didn't start with love. It started with gossip, humiliation, and a boardroom mic accident that went viral. What happened in that rooftop meeting? Why did a ring end up hidden in a strategy folder? And how did a no-nonsense CEO fall for the most unpredictable woman in the company? Stay to the end, because the twist will melt your heart. If this story caught you off guard and made you feel something, don't just scroll. Hit that like button, subscribe for more romantic stories, and drop a comment. Would you say yes if your CEO proposed mid-meeting? Tag a friend who needs a reminder that fairy tales can start with chaos. And don't forget to share this video if you believe in love that breaks all the rules. Emily Rhodes was already late. Her summer internship at Monarch & Co., one of the biggest media corporations in the country, was supposed to start at 9 a.m. sharp. It was now 8:58. She was still across the street, holding a half-spilled vanilla latte in one hand and her oversized tote bag in the other, power walking like her life depended on it. "Of course the bus breaks down today," she muttered, pushing her wind-tossed hair behind her ear as she sprinted across the plaza in front of the sleek, mirrored skyscraper. She barely had time to register the heavy revolving door before diving through it, and then it happened. Smack. Full-body collision. Coffee. Everywhere. The impact made her stumble back 2 steps. Her latte, what was left of it, painted a large caramel-colored splash across the chest of a man's pristine, dark gray suit. Time froze. "Oh my God," she gasped, eyes wide. "I'm so sorry. That lid was loose, I swear." Her heart pounded, her cheeks flushed a deep red. The man didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His eyes met hers. Cold, sharp, calculating. His jaw tightened, but his expression stayed eerily calm. Too calm. He looked down at the stain, then back at her, slowly, like a man memorizing a face he was going to ruin later. Emily forced a shaky smile. "It's just coffee. Happens all the time, right?" He didn't answer, just raised a single eyebrow. Then, without a word, he turned and walked off toward the security turnstiles. The guards parted for him like automatic doors. He didn't swipe a badge. He didn't look back. Emily stood frozen in place, her brain racing. Okay, that went well. Coffee disaster and passive-aggressive death stare. Nothing screams first impression like staining someone's suit before 9 a.m. Still flustered, she rushed to the elevator and tapped her ID badge against the scanner. It beeped. Doors opened. She stepped inside and took a deep breath. As the floors ticked upward, she checked her reflection in the chrome paneling. Frizzy hair, smudged mascara, lipstick slightly off-center. She dabbed at her face with a crumpled napkin. Welcome to the jungle. When she arrived at the 17th floor, the intern orientation level, the HR rep barely looked up from her clipboard. "Emily Rhodes?" "Yes, that's me. You'll be shadowing the communications department. Morning meeting starts in 10. Conference room B. And no drinks allowed." "Copy that," Emily replied, gripping her now empty coffee cup and internally screaming. 10 minutes later, she walked into the glass-walled conference room, and her stomach dropped. There he was, the coffee guy, sitting at the head of the long mahogany table, dry-cleaned, composed, glancing at a sleek black tablet with one hand, sipping water with the other. No freaking way. He glanced up, made eye contact. Recognition flickered across his face, subtle but unmistakable. The room fell quiet. Everyone looked at her. She cleared her throat. "Hi, Emily Rhodes, intern, not holding coffee. I promise." No one laughed, except him, barely. A smirk, a single twitch at the corner of his mouth. But it was there. The woman beside him, a stern-looking executive in her 40s, gave Emily a pointed look. "You're late." Yes, but I'm here now. Fully present. No beverages. Ready to learn." A few people around the table exchanged glances. Emily slid into the nearest open seat, trying to disappear into the chair. Her heart was still hammering from the earlier collision. What were the odds? Out of all the people in the building, out of all the suits in Manhattan, she spilled coffee on the CEO, and now she was sitting 12 feet away from him. His name was Aiden Walker. She finally saw the engraved nameplate in front of him. Aiden Walker, CEO, Monarch & Co. Her throat went dry. The rest of the meeting was a blur. People spoke. Slides flicked by. Emily nodded when others nodded. She didn't retain a single word. All she could think was, "Please let him forget my face. Please, let that coffee have been decaf. Please don't fire me." She didn't know it yet, but that moment, that coffee-stained disaster of an entrance, would change everything. And the man she just humiliated, he wasn't about to forget her anytime soon. Emily should have kept her head down. That was the plan. Blend in, take notes, and survive her first week without another public disaster. But fate, and corporate air conditioning, had other ideas. Just an hour after the coffee collision that ruined someone's $1,000 suit, and possibly her career, she was handed a leather folder and directed to conference room A. "Take minutes," the HR rep had said casually. "The executive strategy meeting. Should be quiet." Quiet, sure, like a landmine field at midnight. Emily clutched the folder like a life preserver as she pushed open the glass door. Her eyes scanned the long boardroom and immediately locked on him. Aiden Walker, pristine, perfect, completely composed, again. He was seated at the head of the table in a crisp navy suit. Like this morning's coffee disaster never happened. No stain, no emotion, just pure power behind cold eyes. Emily froze mid-step. For a second, she thought about turning around and faking appendicitis. Too late. Everyone had already seen her. A woman in a sharp black dress, later introduced as Carla Hume, VP of Strategy, waved her over. "Intern, sit there," Carla said, pointing to a chair, directly across from Aiden. Of course. Emily gave a tight-lipped smile and slid into the chair, heart jackhammering against her ribs. She opened the folder, clicked her pen, and tried to breathe. Aiden hadn't said a word. He didn't need to. The meeting began. Senior executives around the table started tossing out terms like Q3 burn rate, cross-platform expansion, and brand velocity. Emily pretended to write. In reality, she was scribbling phrases like, "CEO staring, il murder? Never touch coffee again. Is it hot in here, or am I dying?" Then, the moment. The microphone was built into the table. Small button, red light, innocent looking. Emily, fumbling with her pen, accidentally pressed it. A soft chime echoed. She didn't realize it was live. Not until her voice rang out over the speaker system. Clear, loud, and far too honest. "Well, I mean, let's be real. CEO Aiden's definitely the hottest guy in this room." Dead. Silence. One executive choked on his water. Carla blinked in disbelief. Someone on the far end actually dropped their pen. Aiden? He turned his head, slowly, and stared straight at her. Her soul left her body. Emily's hand slapped over the mic button, but the damage was done. Room, silent. Air, heavy. Time, stopped. Aiden finally spoke, calm, clipped, and cutting. "Are you the intern, or the event host?" A few muffled chuckles broke the tension, mostly from people terrified of breathing wrong. Emily sat frozen, cheeks burning, eyes locked on the folder like it could teleport her out of this nightmare. I didn't mean, I was just," she stammered. Aiden raised a hand slightly. "That's enough." She shut up instantly. The meeting resumed, but her brain didn't. Every word spoken floated past her like static. She was too busy replaying every millisecond of her accidental confession. Did I really just say that? Out loud? In front of the CEO? On a mic? By the time the meeting ended, she couldn't even look in Aiden's direction. As the executives gathered their papers and filed out, Carla gave Emily a long, unreadable look. "Bold strategy," she muttered under her breath, and walked away. Emily was the last to stand. She didn't notice Aiden was still at the table, until his voice cut through the room again. "Ms. Rhodes?" She flinched, turned slowly. He was reviewing something on his tablet, but his eyes flicked up briefly. "I expect the minutes on my desk by 3 o'clock p," he said, voice neutral. Then, a pause. And next time, turn off the mic before rating management. She stared at him, mortified. But was that a smirk? Before she could process it, he stood and walked out. Emily sat back down in her chair, buried her face in her hands, and whispered, "First coffee. Now this. What next? Accidentally marry him." She had no idea how close she was to the truth. Emily barely slept that night. Who could blame her? After accidentally declaring the CEO the hottest man in the room through a live microphone in front of 10 department heads, she was just grateful security hadn't escorted her out with a box of tissues and her half-filled HR forms. But by the next morning, it got worse. At exactly 9:02 a.m., her company email pinged. Subject: Report to CEO's office. From Executive Admin, Office of Aiden Walker. Her stomach dropped. She read it 3 times. The words didn't change. It was real. She was being summoned, and not by HR, not by her supervisor, by Aiden Walker himself. The walk from the intern desk cluster to the 31st floor felt like marching toward her own funeral. Her hands were clammy. Her heart was racing. She rehearsed apologies in her head. "I promise I'm not normally this unprofessional. I'll leave quietly. No need to call building security. Please don't sue me." The executive assistant waved her in with a neutral smile. Emily stepped into the CEO's office. And yes, it was exactly what you'd expect. Floor-to-ceiling windows, bookshelves that probably hadn't been touched in years, and Aiden himself, standing behind a massive glass desk, back turned, staring out at the Manhattan skyline like a Bond villain deciding whether to blow up the city. She froze. "Sir?" He turned slowly. No smile, no scowl. Just unreadable. "Emily Rhodes," he said, motioning to the chair in front of him. She sat down, stiff, hands folded tight in her lap, ready to be fired. Ready to pack up her one plant and go back to waitressing. But he didn't fire her. Instead, he asked one simple question. "Why did you apply for this internship?" That's it. No mention of coffee, no mention of microphones, no threats, just that. Emily blinked. I mean, I love media. I've always been into storytelling, branding, campaigns." He said nothing. She cleared her throat. "And, it helps my GPA if I intern somewhere fancy." Silence. She wanted to melt into the floor. That last part was a joke, sort of. Still nothing, no smile, no frown. His expression was unreadable. Then, without warning, he tapped on a file on his tablet, slid it across the desk, and said, "You'll be assisting on the Vega project. Temporary assignment. Starting now." Emily blinked. "Wait, I'm not fired?" "No." "You're not mad?" Aiden looked up. "Should I be?" She shook her head like a bobblehead on steroids. "Nope, nope, definitely not." He nodded once and turned back to his screen. "You're dismissed." She left the office, half walking, half floating, with adrenaline still rushing through her veins. It didn't take long for the rumors to start. By lunchtime, half the building had already heard the news. The intern who humiliated herself yesterday? She's now working directly under the CEO. By 3:00 p.m., it had spiraled further. She's either blackmailing him or dating him. Maybe she's a secret investor's daughter. Nepotism, classic. Emily felt the stares in the elevator. She heard whispers when she walked into the cafeteria. She saw 2 analysts literally stop talking when she passed by. One even dropped her yogurt. "What did I do?" she whispered to herself. "I didn't ask for this. I just wanted credit hours and free coffee." But the truth was worse than gossip. She couldn't back out. She was now part of something bigger. The Vega project. A top-tier marketing launch that required precision, late nights, and working side by side with the most intimidating man in the building. And that meant more meetings, more eyes, more pressure, worse. It meant more time in that glass-walled office, alone with Aiden Walker. He didn't smile at her, but he didn't avoid her either. He started asking for her input, quick thoughts, clarifications, tiny things, but they added up. And while the office gossiped, Emily was trying to survive every second without saying something dumb, knocking over a water pitcher, or tripping on a power cord. Because deep down, she knew one thing. She was walking a tightrope. One wrong move and she wouldn't just fall, she'd become company legend for all the wrong reasons. But something else kept her going, something she didn't want to admit yet. Aiden was paying attention to her, and she wasn't sure if that terrified her or thrilled her. By week 2, Emily had a new routine. Wake up at 6 a.m. 9 a.m. Rehearse 3 ways to not embarrass herself. Avoid elevators packed with gossipers, and sit 5 feet from Aiden Walker while pretending to breathe like a normal person. The Vega project was in full swing. Late nights, tight deadlines, and somehow Emily, the intern who spilled coffee and blurted out personal opinions into a live mic, had become part of the core team, and that meant more time with Aiden. Way more. But here's the thing. He was changing. Not in obvious ways. Not suddenly warm or friendly. But his tone with her had shifted. His comments, once clinical, were now laced with something else. Something dry. Clever. Almost teasing. It started small. She'd emailed a pitch slide, her first solo contribution, and used the wrong font. Nothing major. She caught it 2 minutes later and sent a corrected version. But when she stepped into his office that morning, Aiden looked up from his screen and said, "Times New Roman, Ms. Rhodes? What is this, a term paper?" Emily froze. I fixed it. Resent the file." He leaned back, fingers steepled, unreadable as ever. "If it had been anyone else, I would have dismissed the file entirely. Beat. But you make me curious." Emily blinked. That word, curious. It wasn't the way he said it. It was the look in his eyes, like he wasn't just talking about fonts anymore. So she fired back, without thinking. "Curious about my skills, or my mistakes?" Aiden's lip twitched, half a smirk, half a warning. "I haven't decided yet." That's when it started. The conversations with double edges. Dialogue that sounded like business, but felt like chess. Every sentence was layered, every glance, a test. She noticed the way he'd lean slightly forward when she spoke in meetings, the way his eyes lingered for half a second longer than necessary when she challenged an idea, the way he never interrupted her, but corrected others mid-sentence. And Emily, despite her better judgment, started to match his energy. When he tossed her a stack of printouts and said, "Highlight everything that doesn't deserve to live," she replied, "Brutal. I like it." When he asked if she was staying late again, she said, "Only if you stop pretending I'm not helpful." And when he casually remarked, "Most interns don't last a month," she grinned and said, "Most interns don't have this much material to work with." He didn't smile, but his eyes did. The weird part? It wasn't flirting. Not really. It wasn't safe enough to be flirting. It was something sharper, a mental dance, a tension that pulled tighter every time they spoke. And she wasn't the only one noticing. People started watching them in meetings. Really watching. Not just whispering about the intern with special access, but wondering what exactly was going on between the two of them. Because from the outside, it looked like something was brewing. Too much eye contact, too many conversations that ended with silent stares, too many moments where Emily walked out of his office visibly flushed, from stress or something else. At one point, Emily caught her reflection in the elevator mirror. Hair in a rushed bun, dark circles from too many late nights, clutching a laptop covered in Post-its. She sighed. "This is either the start of something insane, or the last week I work here." But what really stuck with her, what played in her head when she tried to sleep, was that line from Aiden, "You make me curious." Because no one like him, polished, powerful, unreadable, ever said that to someone like her. And when he did, it wasn't about documents or deadlines. It was about her, who she was, why she wasn't like the rest. And it scared her how much she wanted to keep him curious. By now, Emily had gotten used to walking on eggshells. But nothing prepared her for being Aiden Walker's +1 to the annual shareholder gala. She hadn't even known it was a formal event. One second, she was sorting pitch decks. The next, his voice slid across the office. You'll come with me tonight, 7 p.m. sharp, black dress. That was it. No explanation, no smile, no emotion, just a verbal invitation that wasn't really a request. She spent 2 hours panicking, another hour choosing a dress, and 30 minutes wondering if this was a test or a trap. The gala was held at a rooftop ballroom overlooking the East River. Crystal chandeliers, string quartet, floor-length gowns, power ties, and champagne served like water. Everyone who mattered in the media world was there. Emily felt out of place the second she stepped in. But Aiden? He owned the room. Every handshake, every gaze, every whispered deal. He didn't just walk. He commanded. And Emily, by his side in a navy off-shoulder dress, felt like a foreign object, a spotlight and a target at the same time. The whispers started fast. Is that the intern? She's younger than his last assistant. Maybe she's a rebound. Or a weapon. And then came Clara Evans. She appeared out of nowhere, all fire-red lipstick and tailored confidence. Clara was Aiden's ex, a fact Emily hadn't known until tonight. But it didn't take long to figure it out. Clara was stunning. PR director at Monarch's biggest rival. Sharp-tongued, polished, dangerous. She walked straight up to Aiden, smiled like a dagger, and said, "Well, I see you've upgraded, or downgraded, depending on the context." Emily stiffened. Aiden gave Clara a glance so cold it could have frozen champagne. But he didn't speak. And that silence? Clara filled it instantly. She's adorable. The intern, right? Must be nice to have a summer fling with someone who still believes in dreams. Emily didn't wait for Aiden to defend her. She didn't need to. She simply whispered, "Excuse me," and walked out, down the hallway, past the glitter, through the glass doors, onto the terrace overlooking the city. She needed air. She needed space. She needed to remember she wasn't here for this. But just as she leaned over the railing, collecting her breath, she heard the door click behind her. Heavy footsteps. Slow, familiar. Aiden. He didn't speak right away. She did. "If I'm just temporary, Aiden, you should have said so up front." He paused. "Emily." "No," she cut in, her voice low but steady. "You don't get to use me as some human shield in your chess match with an ex. You want to prove something? Fine. But not with me. I'm not a message, I'm not a prop, and I'm not a revenge accessory." Aiden looked at her. Not like the CEO, not like the strategist, but like a man trying to figure out how he'd just been read like a book. "I didn't invite you to prove anything," he said. "Then what was it?" she challenged. "Because tonight, it felt like a game, and I'm not playing." The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was heavy, honest. "I asked you to come," he finally said, "because you're the only person in the room who doesn't pretend." Emily's chest tightened. He stepped closer. "I didn't expect Clara to show. And if I wanted to make her jealous, I wouldn't have brought someone who actually makes me forget her." Her eyes locked on his, raw, unfiltered, painfully sincere. But she didn't melt. Not this time. Instead, she said quietly, "Then treat me like that. Not like a distraction. Not like an experiment." He nodded once, slowly. Then he said what she wasn't ready for. "You're not temporary, Emily." She didn't respond, just looked out over the city again, heart hammering. Because for the first time since this whole mess began, this wasn't a joke anymore. Not for her, and definitely not for him. It had been 2 weeks since the shareholder gala, 2 weeks since Emily called out the most powerful man in the company for using her as a pawn. 2 weeks since he looked her in the eye and said, "You're not temporary." Since then, they'd kept it professional. Mostly. No flirting, no double meanings, no late-night office banter. Just long glances across meeting rooms. Unfinished sentences. Moments that felt too loud in their silence. And then, on a Wednesday evening, just as Emily was about to pack up and head out, her email pinged. From Aiden Walker. Subject, 10 p.m. Rooftop message. "You still owe me a report. Don't be late." That was it. No attachment, no context, no emotion. She stared at the screen. Her pulse jumped. 10 p.m. Rooftop. A report she didn't know. By 9:45, she was standing in front of the elevator, heart thudding like a drumline. The building was nearly empty. Security had switched to night mode. The sky outside was deep navy, scattered with stars over Manhattan. She pressed the rooftop access button. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. She stepped out into the wind, and there he was. Aiden Walker, hands in his pockets, shirt sleeves rolled to his forearms, standing under the rooftop lights like some kind of cinematic secret. The kind that ruins you in all the right ways. He didn't turn when she approached, just said, without looking, 12 minutes early. Impressive. Emily crossed her arms. Didn't want to be late for a fake deadline. Aiden smiled, just barely. Then, slowly, he turned and reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small, silver USB drive and held it out. She took it. "What's on this?" she asked. He met her eyes. "Nothing." Emily blinked. "Nothing?" He nodded. "It's empty. Completely blank." She narrowed her gaze. "So this isn't about a report?" "No." Beat. Then, without flinching, without blinking, he said, "I don't want the report. I just want you." The rooftop felt suddenly too quiet. The wind softened, and Emily, who had been holding herself together through sarcasm, panic, gossip, and late-night meetings, finally let her guard slip. Just enough. She stared at him, words stuck in her throat. "I didn't know how to say it," Aiden admitted. "I've built my entire career avoiding mess. And then you walked in, with coffee on your hands and too much honesty in your voice, and somehow everything got messy." Emily didn't move, didn't breathe, just listened. "I kept telling myself it was just curiosity, an interesting intern, a distraction." He stepped closer, just one step. "But it's not curiosity anymore." Still, she said nothing, because if she spoke, her voice might break. So he continued, "I don't want rumors. I don't want games. I just want you to know. This isn't temporary for me. Not anymore." There it was. No dramatic music, no thunder, just a man on a rooftop, handing her a blank USB and the most honest sentence he'd ever said. Emily finally exhaled and smiled. "About time," she whispered. Aiden raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me? You've been staring at me like that for 3 weeks. I thought maybe you had a nervous twitch." Aiden let out a quiet laugh, the first real one she'd ever heard from him. Then he said, "So, is this the part where I ask you out properly?" Emily looked down at the USB, turned it over in her hand. "Only if I don't have to actually file a report after." "No reports," he said. "Just dinner, or coffee, with the lid on this time." She stepped forward, close enough to feel his warmth, close enough to hear his heartbeat. "I'm in," she said softly. And just like that, the story shifted, from tension to something warmer, from second guesses to certainty, from intern and CEO to something more. And up there on the rooftop, beneath the Manhattan skyline, Emily realized she hadn't just survived the internship, she'd rewritten all the rules, and maybe, just maybe, Aiden Walker had too. A year can change everything. 12 months ago, Emily Rhodes was balancing coffee trays and dodging humiliation in glass-walled boardrooms. Now she had her own desk, her own office badge, and a title that didn't have intern in it. Full-time, permanent, tenant, earned. She had survived the rumors, the sideways looks, the awkward rooftop confession, and somehow she'd become one of the youngest creative analysts at Monarch & Co. though. But one thing hadn't changed. Aiden Walker. Well, not entirely. He was still the CEO, still sharp and buttoned up, still the kind of man who could quiet a room with a raised eyebrow. But with Emily, there were cracks in the ice now. Warm glances during meetings, inside jokes no one else noticed, little touches no one dared to question. To the rest of the company, they were a power couple in the making. To Emily, it still felt unreal. And then came the quarterly strategy meeting. Aiden had called for a full department briefing in the largest conference room. Glass walls, floor-length curtains, cold water pitchers lined like soldiers. Everyone assumed it was just another big pitch review. But Emily should have known something was off when she saw her name printed first on the schedule. When she walked in, her assigned seat wasn't in the back. It was at the table, right next to Aiden. He looked calm, maybe too calm. "Emily," he said, sliding a sleek black folder across to her. "I need your feedback on this immediately. Your perspective is critical." She raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "You'll see." The room settled. Conversations hushed. Aiden stood to open the meeting, his tone as formal as ever. "Today's proposal is ambitious, bold, a long-term investment with serious returns, if executed with commitment." Everyone leaned in. The slide deck blinked awake on the screen. Emily opened the folder and froze, because tucked between two laminated pages, pressed flat like something sacred, was a ring, a delicate, rose gold engagement ring, nestled into a velvet cutout right in the middle of a fake financial breakdown. Her heart skipped a beat. She looked up. Aiden was already watching her, and then, in front of everyone, he said, "Now, show of hands. Who's ready to say yes to this project?" Most hands shot up, confused but obedient. Then he added, voice softer now, eyes locked on hers, "Emily, if you're ready to say yes to, just put the ring on." The room exploded. Laughter, gasping, applause. Cameras came out. Phones hit record. Emily's face flushed pink, her hand trembling slightly as she looked from the ring to the man who just broke every corporate protocol imaginable. He smiled. Not the CEO smile, the real one. The one she saw when he made late-night ramen with too much chili oil, or when she fell asleep on his couch watching Shark Tank. She took a breath, then reached into the folder and slid the ring onto her finger. The room erupted again. Standing ovation, cheers. Someone even popped a soda bottle like champagne. Aiden stepped closer, whispered so only she could hear, "Still think you're just temporary?" She shook her head, tears barely held back. "No, not anymore." From intern, to insider, to fiancé. Emily Rhodes had walked into Monarch & Company with a late coffee and shaky confidence. Now she was walking out with a ring on her finger and a future she never saw coming. And as the applause echoed through the glass halls, the only thing louder was her heartbeat. 6 months after the ring, Monarch & Company was buzzing with bigger contracts, tighter deadlines, and a new power duo no one dared to question. Emily Rhodes and Aiden Walker. They weren't just partners in title anymore. They were partners in everything. Strategy meetings, Sunday brunch, laughing over supply chain delays, arguing about the color scheme of a new campaign, whispering across boardroom tables when no one else was paying attention. Aiden had changed, slightly. He still wore his tailored suits and still terrified junior staff with just a glance. But when it came to Emily, the ice had melted. He smiled more, listened more. And once, just once, he actually told a joke during a Monday stand-up. It bombed. But Emily laughed anyway. Life was moving fast. Then, one Thursday morning, the kind where everything felt too quiet, Emily walked into Aiden's office, said nothing, and placed something on his desk. A small, white plastic stick. Next to it, a yellow sticky note. "Before you plan the next project, there's a new startup in development." Aiden blinked, looked down. 2 lines, clear, pink, undeniable. For a second, time didn't just slow. It stopped. Emily stood across the desk, arms folded, pretending to be composed. But her eyes shimmered with emotion, and her fingers fidgeted behind her back. She hadn't rehearsed how he'd react. She hadn't needed to. Because when Aiden finally looked up, he didn't speak. He didn't panic. He just smiled, wide and real and deep, and leaned back in his chair, like everything in the world had just fallen into place. "A startup, huh?" he said softly. Emily nodded. "Deadline? About 8 months." He stood, walked over, and without hesitation wrapped his arms around her. The kind of hug that said, "I didn't know I could feel this much joy all at once." Then he pulled back, grinned, and whispered, "We'll need a pitch deck." Emily rolled her eyes. "If you make a PowerPoint for this, I'm going back to HR." He laughed, a real, unguarded laugh, the kind he never let anyone see, the kind only Emily could pull from him. They stood there for a moment, wrapped in a quiet future neither of them planned, but both of them wanted more than anything, because this wasn't just a twist ending, it was a beginning, From the first spilled coffee, to awkward meetings, late-night glances, rooftop confessions, boardroom proposals, to this, a pink line, a sticky note, a new heartbeat. She came in as an intern. He was the CEO who never smiled. They rewrote every rule. And now, they were building something no merger could match, a family. Because sometimes the most unexpected projects turn out to be the ones that change your entire world. Sometimes, life's biggest surprises begin with the smallest missteps. What started as a spilled coffee turned into a love story that shattered every rule and taught us something deeper. You don't have to be perfect to be chosen. Emily wasn't the smartest person in the room. She wasn't polished or powerful. But she showed up with honesty, resilience, and heart, and that was more powerful than any resume. This story reminds us, love, success, and transformation often find us when we stop pretending and start being real. Whether it's in a boardroom, a relationship, or your own self-worth, vulnerability is not weakness. It's the beginning of something stronger. Have you ever had a moment that changed your life in ways you never expected? Share it in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. And if this one touched your heart, hit subscribe for more stories that prove even chaos can lead to something beautiful.